I've just changed what I was going to talk about this morning. Just a little bit, but not totally, because I spent the last 3 weeks working on this. But it was only after I agreed, this is in my way, to give the message on Luke 16, verses 1 through 13, that Pastor Laura mentioned that this was a text that she did not enjoy preaching from. However, she gave me some information and some ideas, and I read through some of the commentaries I have at home, and I read at least 6 or 7 translations of this text. Some of the downloads I got were from major theologians like David Lose at Philadelphia's the Lutheran Theological Seminary at Philadelphia, and some lady at another Lutheran seminary. One was a president, one was a preaching theologian. We had heard in our Sunday school class, we spent almost a year going through one of David Lose's studies, and I've heard him at Indiana, Kentucky Synod, so I followed what he said, and his commentary that he put out last Tuesday was, so what do you think? Is it ever okay to tell the congregation that you really have no idea what a passage means? I have no idea what it really meant, but you're going to hear what I decided it was going to mean. All the reading helped a little. It helped me put things together. I had everything figured out until yesterday morning when I picked up another translation, The Message by Eugene Peterson, and I reread the whole thing in his language, and it was a little different, so I was going to share it all with you this morning. But then you would have to listen to all the lessons twice, which may be good, maybe not be good. So you get to listen to part of them twice. Amos hit me with his. It was good. Tom, you did a beautiful job reading it, but he said it a little differently, and it's a little more contemporary. Listen to this, you who walk over all the weak, you who treat poor people as less than nothing, who say, when's my next paycheck coming so I can get out and live it up? How long to the weekend when I can go out and have a good time? Why give little and take much and never do an honest day's work? You exploit the poor using them, and then when they're used up, you discard them. That hit me. Then I went to Timothy, 1 Timothy, and what the children sang this morning and what the choir is going to sing later was about prayer, and I had not really thought about that in connection with this until I reread Timothy. Where'd it go? He wants not only us, but everyone saved. Everyone to get to know the truth we've learned, that there's one God and only one, and one priest mediator between God and us, Jesus, who offered himself in exchange for everyone held captive by sin, to set them all free. Eventually, the news is going to get out. This and this only has been my appointed work, getting this news to those who have never heard of God and explaining how it works by simple faith and plain truth. That made sense. Then I went to Luke, and I decided you don't have to hear all of what Tom read, or Kathy read that part already, but I wanted to read the end of it. After the steward or the dishonest manager had reduced everybody's fees, here's the surprise. The manager praised the crooked manager, or the master praised the crooked manager. And why? Because he knew how to look after himself. Streetwise people are smarter in this regard than law-abiding citizens. They are on constant alert, looking for angles, surviving by their wits. I want you to be smart in the same way, but for what is right, using every adversity to stimulate you to creative survival, to concentrate your attention on the bare essentials so you'll live, really live, and not complacently just get by on good behavior. Living is scary. There's too much under here. Last week when Don preached, he was talking about the parable of the lost coin, and there's also the parable of the lost sheep. And during these parables and the following one, which is in between the parable of the prodigal son, he is talking to lots of people, including the Pharisees. But when he gave today's lesson, he was talking to his disciples, but the Pharisees were listening. And they were eavesdropping. And so I'm going to read you the next two verses, which was well organized last night, but not this morning. The next two verses explain a little bit. When the Pharisees, a money-obsessed bunch, heard him say these things, they rolled their eyes, dismissing him as hopelessly out of touch. So Jesus spoke to them. You are masters at making yourselves look good in front of others, but God knows what's behind the appearance. And that speaks to all of us. If we're looking good in front of others, but we're not really that person. One of the books I read was the Wilmington Bible Handbook, which was somebody named Wilmington wrote it. But it talked about commentaries on each of these areas, and these are the ones that I'm concentrating on today. Amos talks about oppression of the poor and corrupt business practices. God does not forget the evil we do. And at that time, and even still now, Orthodox Jews do not handle money on the Sabbath. I never knew that until early this morning. Psalm 113 says that we are to praise God's name during every waking hour, because who else is like God? He's enthroned in the heavens, and yet he stoops down to help the poor and the needy. Timothy reminds us that we are to pray for everyone, including those in authority, so that we might live in peace. But the main purpose of our prayers is that the gospel may go forward unhindered, for Jesus is the only mediator between God and us. And from Luke, and this is the one that caught my eye the first time, we are God's stewards and managers, using the wealth he has given us, but owning absolutely nothing. And someday, God will check our bookkeeping. In light of this, we are to use wisely the resources he's entrusted to us. Now, I'm trying to figure out what to say. Pastor happened to mention in passing one day, she says, remember, you were a project manager. And I thought about that, and yes, I was. For 10 years, the last 10 years of my work life, I was a professional project manager at Kentucky State Government. I had 4 years working as a branch manager and supervising between 20 and 23 other project managers, of which we were all handling 4 or 5 projects each. So we had about approximately 80 projects going on at one time. Now, these are all IT projects, and I only had to worry about the amount of money that we spent on personnel costs. I did not have to worry about hardware. That was somebody else's concern. But as a project manager, we were accountable and responsible for all the results of our projects. They had to be completed on time, on budget, with the correct quality, and we had absolutely no authority about anybody who worked with us on our team. And it's kind of like being a coach, I realized. A coach, when the team does well, the team won. When the team does poorly, the coach caused the problem. That's a project manager's job. You take none of the credit and all of the blame. And I was really fortunate. Of the many projects I had, most of them were successful. And I did not have to take the blame for too many. And they ranged from really small projects, 1 to 2 week long, with maybe 2 or 3 people working on it, less than $1,000, which in government terms is not much money at all. My largest project started out as a $23 million collaboration, that was Kentucky's part, with multiple other states on a national sales tax program. We were rewriting the Kentucky sales tax systems, 30-year-old computer systems, but it was quickly downsized to $2.1 million when the powers that be decided they wanted to use the money for something else. but we still had to accomplish the same results. 2 years later, our team of what totaled out to be 80 people was one of 2 states that went live with our system on the first day, the day it was due. And that was a real accomplishment. Within the next few months, 19 other states came live. Kentucky and Kansas were 1 and 2, but I don't know which was which. I hope to think that we beat Kansas out by at least an hour. Instead of our $2.1 million, we came in at under budget at $1.9 million. Everything worked fine, and Kentucky government reaped the benefits and retrieved all the investment in less than 1 year, which is not normally done on computer systems. So I understand what is managing, not what is not mine. The commentaries pretty much only talked about the rich man and the dishonest steward and how we should manage money. And another commentary said that, most rich people in that time were loan sharks, and the steward was, the steward or the dishonest manager was their collection agency. Jewish law forbade charging interest on loans because it exploited the poor. And so they could not charge interest, but they would put it into the principal, so it was hidden. And one scholar said the hidden interest rates appeared to have been about 25% for money and 50% for goods. So if I borrowed $100, I immediately owed you $125. And I don't think those were the right numbers, but this dishonest steward or this dishonest manager could have been giving them back some of the money, taking his cut off, or taking them completely back to what they had borrowed, which is what was proper in those days. So we have to consider being wise managers of what we have been given. And I think more about time and efforts than I do about money, because I guess for most of my adult life, I've either not had money or thought I didn't have money. So I did things instead. And I am often dishonest in the terms of this because I don't manage everything wisely. I raise vegetables. I have a wonderful vegetable garden, and it produces, for the most part, pretty well. Not as good as Laura's, but it is. This year, the lettuce, I had so much lettuce I couldn't eat it all. But did I do anything with it? Nope, I put it in the composter. I've had not enough tomatoes to can. I've had more than enough to eat. I've tried to get rid of hot peppers, and nobody else wants them. I did manage to keep those, but so they tend to spoil before I can eat or can them or freeze them. But what I found, I'm popping around because it's just not working. St. Augustine said that God gave us people to love and things to use, and original sin manifests itself in our penchant to confuse those two, loving things and using people. We are given our resources, our money, our talents, our skills, our interests to care for others, not to squander for ourselves. And none of us knows how much time we have to do that. To me, this means that I don't know when God is going to call me home and say, okay, Candy, what have you done to love and care for my people? That's my final accountability time. So I need to use the resources he's given me to do what he has asked, and to make up those dishonest manager times when I've gone merrily on my way without considering what I should be doing. One of my favorite guidepost authors is Patricia Lorenz, and she speaks to me directly in her writing. And the devotion I read recently talked about all the things she planned to do to help others. She was going to volunteer for Meals on Wheels. She was going to help seniors write their life stories. She was going to read to patients in the hospital, but she never got her act together. Only when she began to think about all the neighbors around her who could use her help was she able to enjoy using her resources, sharing her home cooking with a widower in her building, taking the mail upstairs to a neighbor who broke her hip, visiting a friend in assisted living. Now, I don't cook, or at least I'm not known for cooking, and it's not something I really enjoy, so that's out for me. But I have my own talents and skills. One, I am nervous but not afraid to stand up here and talk to you. I am terrified to sing, although I'll play the piano for the choir. I teach sewing to children and adults. I absolutely love to do that, and I like watching their faces when they can do something they couldn't do before. And I seem to volunteer for lots of things. I just started Friday teaching another student English as a second language. She's from Iraq and has 5 children at home, so she can't go to English classes. They've been here since November, and she knows a little English. She knows sister, brother, hello, thank you, which are just about the same words I know in Arabic. So we will learn together. I have to remember when I'm looking at all these other volunteer things that I do, that my children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, and my neighbors and my friends are also deserving of my time and attention. So each of us has our own resources that we can use for others. And most of us don't do what we consider to be big things, but the little things we do can and will make a difference. I'm going to ask you to think about the people you know and how the talents and resources they use, their money, their time, their skills, make an impact on you. An impact you could not pay back, but you might be able to pay forward. I want you to think, I'm challenge you for the next week to think of something you can do for someone else, someone who can't repay you, and then do it. And I don't need an accounting of it. Only God needs that accounting. But I want you to consider the mostly unseen work that Glenn Smuck accomplishes to keep this building sound and beautiful. Consider the beautiful music we hear on Sunday. Consider the children's Sunday school teachers and the impact they have on our children. Consider those who write for the Gethsemane Guidepost and the people who donate money or items for the weekend food bags for Garden Springs Elementary, and the people who week after week pack those bags. And consider the many people who pray. And then think about what can you do, or what more can you do? So remember the words of Jesus. I'm going to paraphrase them. If you're honest in small things, you'll be honest in big things. If you're a crook in small things, you'll be a crook in the big things. If you're not honest in small jobs, who will put you in charge of the store? No worker can serve 2 bosses. He'll either hate the first and love the second, or adore the first and despise the second. You cannot serve God and the bank.